In 1988, Korg released the M01, which at that time was their latest and greatest round player keyboard. Now, unlike the FM synthesizers that dominated music during most of the 80s, which get close to replicating any sound through complex modulation of sine waves, round players like the M01 rely on high-quality recordings of real instruments, so they sound way more realistic and are way more flexible. And starting in the 90s, but still up until today, the sound patches from the Korg M01 started to appear pretty much everywhere. And they kind of started spreading immediately. So you got some of them that got included in the Super Famicom SDK, so you can hear them in random SNES games. It's also been around for so long now that a lot of its patches, like the organ, have been resampled and redistributed as part of sample CDs in the 90s. And that's how we ended up with a low-quality version of the M1 organ in the We Everybody Votes channel music. You simply cannot escape the M1. Not even the Venga Boys are immune from it. And Korg has made sure to preserve its legacy by both creating software emulators, which are what I'm using to showcase the stuff to you right now, but most importantly, iterating upon the M1, building new sims that still include the iconic patches. And I want to focus on the Korg 01W from 1991 because without you knowing about it, it might be inside your walls right now. Maybe, I don't know, do you have a Nintendo DS? Korg M01 for the Nintendo DS is one of the coolest things ever made. No, yeah, I was done with that sentence. This is one of 4, technically 2, Korg DS games made by 2 different companies, Cavia and D-Tune. However, all of them are actually the brainchild of one single person, Nobuyoshi Sano, and this one specifically, M01, is a full emulation, a full recreation of one of the most iconic synthesizers of all time, and is often slept on due to several reasons, including not only being region locked, but like store locked to Japan and only to specific stores in Japan. We'll get to that later. And it's like my favorite thing on a Nintendo DS ever made. I carry a DS with me like pretty often, and it's because of this one game, in quotes, because it's an actual tool. And I really want to talk about it in this video, and there's a lot to say about it. But before I do it, I really want to focus on the other Korg games that came before it, because they are the reason why this was made at all. Also, before anyone mentions it, I only realized now, after recording the video, that this earring here somehow got messed up. So for the entire video, I'm gonna have it like this. I don't know, I'm sorry. That's how you know I'm human, okay? I'm not AI. I f up very often. The first entry in the Korg DS saga is DS10. Now you have to keep in mind that DS10 came out in 2008, back when people were still using phones like this one. There was no GarageBand for iOS or anything like that. And what this is, in every single one of its 3 editions, with the best one actually being DS10 Plus, which is identical but is using the hardware of the DSi to give you a bit more features. By the way, the Plus version never came out in Europe or Australia, and it's one of the few DS games that's region locked because of the DSi features.
Anti-Italian discrimination.
But regardless of what version you're using or how you have obtained it, all of them do pretty much the same thing, which is emulating an analog synthesizer. So you get to play around and make cool sounds. By basically f***ing around, I just made the sound of some very shady bubbles. I wouldn't drink whatever is making the sound. The experience of making music using Korg DS10, just like the old line of Korg synths is trying to emulate, is like making a sandwich, starting from the flour and baking your own bread. It's very cool, it's fun, it's very close to the Korg MS line is trying to emulate, and you also get some nice preloaded presets to start with, but you're gonna have to carefully craft your own sounds before you can actually make any music. There's a great video by Audio Blitz about Korg DS10 where he's actually using it in a real audio setup, and you can find countless videos on YouTube of people who use this software to make great music. And I have to praise it both for starting this Korg series of games, but also for like giving everyone an easy and fast way to play with analog synthesis. Korg DS10 is how I learned how that works, by the way. I bought it by mistake when I was a kid, when I was 10, without having any idea what it was, and I just kept playing with it, trying to use the square wave to remake sounds from Super Mario Brothers. If you've never tried this game, I would strongly suggest you give it a go. Actually, if you have a 3DS, in 2013, D-Tune made DSN 12. This came out exclusively on the eShop. It was cheaper and just better in every way. You get pretty much the same features, but also this cool 3D oscilloscope right here. This is brilliant. I totally get why they sold 1 gazillion copies of this, but I like this. M01 came out 2 years after the S10, when after Cavia, the company that made the S10, was disbanded, Sano founded his own company, D-Tune Ltd, with Korg M01 DS being the first game they ever worked on. My beloved OG version of M01 was not only a Japanese exclusive, it was an Amazon Japan exclusive. You could not buy this in physical stores. I'm going to blame this entirely on Jeff Bezos. It's his fault. He ruined my childhood. Korg music works tight on M01. We finally get to play with romplers. This is a full 01W in your pocket. At a first glance, Korg M01 DS is ticking all the boxes. Sorry, Florian, I've always wanted to say that. Ranging from the piano, to the organ sound that revived Kylie Minogue's career, to basic but still very useful synth waveforms. Some of my favorites, rave presets. You get all sorts of cheesy MIDI sounding patches, and even stuff like steel drums, which depending on who you are, either make you think about Mario Sunshine or you! There's a wide array of drum kits, from the acoustic kind to the electronic drum machine kind to, most importantly, the penis music kind. These are actually useful. They sound silly, but they're useful. What I want you to realize is that when D-Tune was making this, they were not making a game. It's a pretty well done port of the sound engine from a very expensive keyboard from the 90s to the Nintendo DS. You get 342 sound patches here, including all sorts of 90s sounding effects. And just like on the real keyboard, you get to adjust stuff like attack and release, and when it comes to the drum samples, you actually get to pitch them, so you can make some proto 808s and make trap on here if you want. I don't know why you would do that, but you can. While I was recording this, I actually got locked in for half an hour, and I ended up pitching the penis music sounds and wasting 5 different tracks to remake a song by The Prodigy. So we talked about the sounds, but now we have to talk about how you can use them. And unlike the S10 here, the experience is mostly focused on making compositions more than using this as your live instrument. I mean, you do get a virtual piano, but it's a Nintendo DS touchscreen. It doesn't support multi-touch, so you can't even play chords with it. However, you can do that using the Oscillator emulator. Now, the real Oscillator is this insane synth using a touchpad like the one from a laptop to play music, and it's very f***ing cool. And Korg M01 has a full emulator for it, and you can even configure it to play different chords and different drum beats, so if you're looking to play live, you should use this. However, it is still, I think, mostly meant for recording stuff. Like, it's there as an instrument for you to work on your compositions. I mostly use it to play drums. But the main tool you're going to use on Korg M01 is the piano roll, and this is very similar to what you get on Ableton or FL Studio. You simply use your stylus to draw notes and then move them, copy them, extend their length, or adjust their velocity, and it's extremely intuitive. The way everything is structured, you get 8 tracks to play with and 99 scenes, which are basically the little squares where your sequence of notes goes, and each square has 16 steps by default, where you can extend them to a maximum of 64 each. You can even set different steps for different scenes, and you can set your global BPM for the composition, and also edit the BPM for every single scene, so you can have a song slow down and then speed up again. And of course, you even get FX. You get reverb, delay, and that's it. Those are the only 2. I don't like how the effect settings are global, so if you select like reverb or delay here, every track where you enable the effects is gonna have these settings. You can't set them individually per track. It's either on or off, and I guess I can't really complain about this. The Nintendo DS is a glorified smart light bulb when it comes to processing power, so I guess that would be asking for too much here. And also finally, I want to mention how the mixer here is pretty competent, and both here and in the settings for the patches, you do get several options to set up your left-right panning in case you want to cosplay the Beatles and only have your piano track playing from the right channel. This is straight up just a pretty competent port of the M1 sound engine and composition tools to the DS. I've been obsessed with this for a few years now, and if you follow me on social media, you're probably aware with the fact that I post remakes of songs that I make with this pretty often. If you go on my Instagram, there is like a section just of random songs that I just remake here when I'm bored. And I want to give a shout out to 100 Gags because I actually posted a story tagging them, remaking 757 before it came out, and they reposted the story, so that was really fucking cool of them. I think that if you're aware of the limitations and you have realistic expectations, this is a pretty great creative outlet for music. Of course, you only have 8 tracks, the FX kinda suck, and the patches are either something you love or hate. The Korg M01 is from the late 80s and the other sounds on here are from like the 90s, so you're not going to be easily able to make dubstep on here. But the M1 was used throughout like all of the Eurodance fad and for like a lot of house music, and like you can do pretty much everything with this. And I think that it's also interesting to try and make what you can do with it, trying to like fit a square peg in a round hole, trying to reuse other sounds to make something it's not meant to do. That's what I love doing with this. I want to say that M01 is not perfect by far. It does have some pretty severe drawbacks, which I personally find charming, but they are pain in the ass. And the biggest one is that you can only save up to 10 songs per cartridge, and then you have to delete one if you want to make a new composition. That sucks, but if you're watching this video, you're not a first-mela, you're a smart fella, and you should not be limited by physical constraints like a DS cartridge when it comes to your creativity. What I'm trying to say is that you should not play this game on the real cartridge, just make a backup copy in the way that you prefer. And then if it's legal in your country, just run it through a flash card, or in my case, through Trial Menu on my DSi. This lets you have alternate save slots, so you can effectively basically make infinite songs. Another annoying issue with the DS version of M01 is that the DS only has 4 megabytes of RAM, okay? It's nothing. And if you play too many sounds at once, which admittedly almost never happened to me, it happened like 2 times in a few years, some patches might get muted, like temporarily. It's like simply your DS running out of memory and like trying to not have a stroke. And if you really want to have a clean recording of something you made here, you can simply record every track separately and then combine them using Audacity or whatever. Something that would have been very cool as one of those like DSi features that some games get is exporting your composition, your tracks to MIDI, to your SD card, because the DSi comes with an SD card slot, so that would have been feasible, that would have been extremely cool, and it would have made this way more powerful. But what if I told you we can actually do that, just not on a normal DS? For now at least, because maybe by the end of this video we are going to be able to do it even here, or maybe not. I'll explain it to you in a second, but first we need to take a second for today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by my new desk. This is the FlexiSpot E7 Pro, and it's the best desk that I've ever owned, honestly. YouTube has been my full-time job for a while now, and I absolutely love what I'm doing. I love making YouTube videos. I love every second of it. However, if there's one downside, it is about my health. I'm talking about my back. I am built like this. I am kind of tall, and sometimes I have back pain. And there is one thing that makes my back pain worse, and that is sitting all day at home at my desk, which is what I have to do since I work on YouTube videos for a living. But the FlexiSpot E7 Pro can literally rise up to 128 centimeters and let me work while standing, which is great for my health and also very cool. I can even save different height presets, so if I want my desk to be a different height for different use cases, like maybe I'll put a camera here and have it work as a tripod of sorts, I can confirm live here that it's definitely strong enough to lift one average weight adult human female in front of your eyes. I've actually been playing with this all day long. There's a USB port on the front here to charge your phone, and I was also easily able to assemble it on my own, even though I have zero experience with stuff like this. Everything was super easy. FlexiSpot sells all kinds of standing desks and ergonomic chairs and interesting furniture, and if you want a desk like this but you're on a budget, you can buy their normal E7, which is cheaper and still very cool. But if you want to buy an E7 Pro like mine, you can use my code YTE7P50 to save $50 on it. Click the link in the description to learn more. Thanks so much to FlexiSpot for supporting the channel, and now back to the video. Korg M01D was released in 2013 on the 3DS eShop and is just a better, cheaper version of M01. However, you do need a 3DS for it, because in order to iron out every single one of the kinks that I mentioned, like not having any of your patches muted anymore because the 3DS actually has some RAM, they needed the extra hardware. And we start with the most annoying problem being solved. Since you're saving to the SD card, now you're not limited to 10 songs. You can just save songs up until your SD card is full. The coolest feature of M01D, which again is identical to M01 when it comes to everything. You got the same patches, you got the same UI, same features, but here you can actually export tracks to MIDI, which is what I really wanted on the DSi version and I never got. You can just click MIDI file export, select your track, and it just saves it to your SD card. And you're done. Now what you have to do is simply take out the SD card, which I'm not going to do physically because I have a new 3DS and I have to remove all these screws to do it. So I will host an FTP server. Okay, so I'm currently sitting at my Windows 11 workstation running Ableton, but you can do this with whatever you want that can open and edit MIDI files. I'm going to drag here on Ableton my MIDI that I just exported from Korg M01D using FTP. You can just do it normally with the SD card, but I mean, why? And as you can see here, you have the tracks from the song that you exported loaded on Ableton. This one is the tenor sax track and the drums. And if you try to play them, they're not going to do anything. That's normal because MIDI files don't contain any actual sound data. What they contain is performance data. The MIDI standard is super old. It's used to like connect different instruments together and also record your performances, but it's not recording sound, it's recording how you're playing a song. Some MIDI files can tell your DAW or your instrument what patch it is supposed to load in a generic way, but here with Korg M01D that's not the case, so we need to remember what each track is supposed to be. Now, in order for you to have a perfect match when it comes to the sound, you need to have the Korg M1 plugin. It is paid, it is not super cheap, however you could buy an older version of the Korg Legacy collection and use that because the Korg M1 is from 1988, MIDI is MIDI, it does work, I did try that. But here I got the latest version, I bought this on Splice, it's not sponsored or anything, I just use this. I'm going to like clear up this template here, I'm gonna load the tenor sax patch here. It's matching, but it's a bit lower in pitch, I need to bump it up. There we go, that's the same patch that we were playing on our 3DS, now in higher quality here on our computer. Let me do the same for the drums here. I wouldn't normally use M1 drums if I can avoid that, but I want to like have a perfect match. So drums hit, I need to go to house kit. Okay, so the drums are right, but the sample is not matching. I need to like move this. I need the kick. That's the kick, okay. Anyway though, what I wanted to show you is that here, since we're using a real DAW, we don't have any limits on tracks. I can go nuts here. And most importantly, I can just take this like basic track that I made on my 3DS and I can just pick any instrument here. Let me do the marimba. Most importantly though, MIDI gives me an unprecedented level of control over the performance itself. So I can do stuff here with the performance that I wouldn't ever be able to do on Korg M01. I can edit the duration of every single note way more specifically. I get to apply MIDI envelopes and there are a lot of them. I get to apply effects to MIDI tracks. It sounds like crap here, but you got the point. The MIDI export feature transforms M01 completely from an isolated environment into basically a sketchpad for musical ideas, and that's precisely what its creator, Sano, said was the goal. I managed to find a pretty interesting Japanese interview from Gakor where he says that growing up he loved music. He bought a Korg MS-10 when he was 13, and despite him knowing absolutely no music theory, he loved making cool sounds with it. He only got around to learn how to play chords in college, talking about how back then he could never afford a Korg M01. In '92 he ended up graduating in telecommunication engineering, and right after college, looking for a job, he got an offer from Korg, and he ended up declining it because he found their work environment too stoic and unwelcoming, and instead he decided to apply without any real experience whatsoever, without any music theory knowledge, except knowing how to mess with a synthesizer and knowing a few chords, to work as a sound designer for Namco. Okay, I'm sorry for the bad quality, but I am currently hiding. I traveled back to 2010 because there was something that wasn't adding up about the translation of these interviews, so I wanted to check in person. I just stole this MacBook of a random lady on the street. I decided to check the original interview, not the archived one, and to translate it, and you can see that Sano is talking about joining Namco for a project called Wonder Eggs. And for the longest time, I assumed that Wonder Eggs was like some NES game, something like obscure. You know, those RPG titles that nobody played in the West. And no, it's actually an amusement park. He actually applied to work for Namco without any experience, and he was hired. They actually hired him for his job. And from then, he actually went on to work on some video games. But the entire, like, his whole work background, his whole work story is insane. Excuse me, now I have something very important to do. I'll leave you with present me. He got to work there for ages, working on games like Ridge Racer, Tekken, Beatmania. He then moved to Kavia again to work as a composer, but that's where he ended up wanting to make a synthesizer for the Nintendo DS. And talking to his fellow co-producer for the game, looking at an open DS on a table, he realized that it looked like the MS-10 he had as a kid, and everything clicked for him. The MS-10 is simple enough to be emulated, but not only that, he also knew firsthand how easy it is to learn how to make sounds with it. After the big success of the S10, he decided to try again with M01, this time focusing specifically on trying to make a tool that will make it easy for everyone to compose. Not to make cool sound design, but to actually make tracks. And I think that with both the S10 and M01, he definitely succeeded. I ended up using the S10 a lot when I was a kid, and it taught me the basics of analog sound synthesis. I know how to do stuff with synthesizers now because of it. And when it comes to M01, he did the same for music composition. I discovered the DS version of M01 when I was in college, and I ended up using it to learn how to remake songs that I loved from scratch. I wanted to understand if I could discern all the various tracks just by listening to them and recreate them from scratch by ear. And being able to do that anywhere I want without having to use a computer genuinely taught me so much. Now, if you want to get Korg M01D now, you can't. Nintendo closed the 3DS eShop a few years ago, so if you missed that chance, you can't get this anymore. And I would never ever suggest, despite how easy it is, like a baby could do it, that you jailbreak your 3DS and sideload a copy of it. And it doesn't matter that pirating this would never affect the developers, since you literally physically cannot buy it legitimately, so pirating it or not is not going to do any damage, and word of mouth can actually help them by supporting their next games. You shouldn't Google how easy it is to do it and then do it. That's not something that I'm suggesting you do. But let's say that hypothetically a 3DS with an installed copy of Korg M01D falls from a truck running in your hands. If that happens, you might be delighted to know that Korg M01D supports sharing one song with Street Pass. I really fucking miss Street Pass, dude. And now for the big thing that's in the title, which is somehow getting the music that I made here to play from a floppy in a boombox. What is that about? This is a Roland MT80S, and coming straight from 1995, it's a MIDI floppy boombox. Just a few years ago, TechMoon made a great in-depth video about this thing, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It's a boombox that only lets you play music in MIDI format from a floppy disk. You copy your MIDI files to a floppy disk, which is a mess to do today, but we'll get to that later. You don't have to worry about size because MIDI files are usually just a few kilobytes, so 1.44 megabytes is gonna feel like a terabyte to you. And then you just put the disc in the boombox and press play. Why did humans make this? Well, there's a very simple explanation. Since MIDI files are just a series of instructions telling your instrument how to play whatever you want instead of being just a static audio file you listen to, which is also why if you play them on different players with different sound phones, they're gonna sound a bit different. You can very easily modify them and adjust them to do whatever you want. So for example, you can set the BPM to be slower, to be faster, or you can easily transpose the entire song to a different key. You can even isolate the single stems without having to pay Kanye West for his overpriced rubber MP3 player. No, but seriously, if you want to isolate the stems from a song, which can be useful if you're trying to analyze drum patterns or stuff like that, just use UVR. It's free, it's open source. But yeah, with MIDI you don't even need that because the tracks are usually already separated, so you can just select them here by pressing these physical buttons. All of these features make the MT-ADS a very good learning tool for musical students. And of course, being Japanese, it also doubles as a karaoke machine. So yeah, where were we? Oh yeah, 3DS MIDI files from Korg M01. If you just copy them from the 3DS to a floppy drive, they're gonna sound like this. Korg M10 is not embedding any instrument information in the MIDI file itself, and while that's not a problem in Ableton or Reaper because I can just import whatever instrument I want on the right track, our MIDI boombox here does not know what the fuck to do with this file, so it's going to play every single track with its default sound, which is the piano, including the drums, and it's going to sound like shit. How do we fix this? Well, it's very simple. The MIDI format has a general instrument layout sheet, so you reference that, you check what number corresponds to the right instrument you want to play on a track, and then using your favorite software to edit MIDI files, you can change the bank and the program for every track to correspond to what you need, which is effectively going to write in the MIDI file itself that one specific track has to use one specific instrument. I used Ableton and Reaper to do this, and when I was done, I finally had a MIDI file which contained every track playing the right instrument. So now the only thing left was copying this to a floppy drive. And here's where I have to tell you how f***ing insane my floppy strategy is, because it is the only one that worked sometimes. Okay, so this is my external floppy drive. It's a USB one, but it's technically speaking, first and foremost, a Dell laptop module. The only computer where this unit actually works properly and lets me format and write stuff to floppy disks is this iBook G3 that I just bought for a different video. So this is an iBook G3 that I got from France. It appears to be an American model from the keyboard and everything, but it came with a pre-installed version of macOS 9 in Italian. So I guess the person who owned this before me was Mr. Worldwide. But yeah, my process is putting the disk inside the Roland MT-ADS, using it to format it, while in the meantime, I copy my edited MIDI file with the correct instrument data to my iPod Shuffle. I then plug that iPod Shuffle to my iBook G3, copy the MIDI file to the desktop, eject the floppy disk from the Roland, eject the iPod, plug in the floppy drive to the iBook G3, put the floppy inside, copy the file to the disk, then eject it, and finally put the disk inside the Roland and hope that it's not going to give me error 20 or error 13. Yeah, the floppy drive died right after recording this. Press F in the comments for my Roland boombox. It's probably just a floppy drive belt. I should be able to repair it just fine. But yeah, it's dead. However, it just died in time for me to do this kind of experiment. However, I still have not really fulfilled the promise of the title, because I told you I was going to make music on a DS and like play it on a floppy, not a 3DS. So, did I just knowingly lie to you to clickbait you into thinking you can do this kind of stuff with a DS? No. I've been actively working towards making this a reality, so I spent the past week on and off trying to figure out the differences between the DS version of the game and the 3DS version, because my plan was trying to build a bridge that lets me convert M01 DS save data into M01 3DS save data, because if you have that, you can just use a 3DS emulator. Here I have Melon DS and Hazahar 3DS, and they're both running my dumps of my copies of the game. If we can figure out a way to convert DS saves into 3DS saves, you can effectively get MIDIs from the OG version by simply using a 3DS emulator emulating M01D as a bridge, like as an in-between. The final goal would be having an open source thing that just takes your .sav DS game save and turns it into several MIDIs depending on what songs you have there. What makes me think we can do this is that after extracting both games, like both ROMs, I can confirm they're running pretty much on the same code base. It's been updated, but they have the same sample data, they have the same pattern data. Using an X editor, I was even able to edit the saves of both versions, and they look very similar. However, the DS version stores all of the data inside one single .sav file, while the 3DS version has one central metadata file containing every name for every track you saved, and the tracks, the actual track data is separated. They are separate files, one per each track. I think something that could potentially help reverse engineer how this works is the fact that both games come with demo songs. They are identical between versions, but the 3DS version, if you extract the actual ROM, you can find between the files the actual individual .bin files for all of these demo songs, and looking at them in a hex editor, to me, seems like they are a weird version of MIDI. So this could potentially be used to map how to convert SAV to MIDI. That would be my strategy. What I'm trying to say is that I really want this to happen. I want people with a Nintendo DS, a normal one that you can find in the folds of your couch, to be able to use it as their musical notebook. So the first person, the first one of you, which manages to make this work, to create a save converter that extracts MIDI tracks from a Korg M01 DS save and successfully converts them to MIDI, is gonna get $100 in gift cards or whatever you want that I can buy legally without having to expose my identity. I can't make a wire transfer, that's what I'm saying. The rules are very simple. You have to make it open source and you have to be the first one to tag me about it on Blue Sky. You're gonna find my Blue Sky down here, and that's pretty much it. Unlike my usual videos, which are close-ended, here, since I'm trying to create something, the situation is gonna be ongoing. I can't see the future, so I can't tell you whether any of you is going to make this work and take my money. And that means that if this video is clickbait, it's your fault. Just make the tool, take my money, and it's not going to be clickbait. So this is future you. After you publish the video, someone will make it work. I just want to send you this message through space and time so that... How do you know that? I haven't published the video yet. Time travel is very simple. You just need to...